The twin suns of Exala Prime cast a golden blaze across the crystalline towers of Zaph, their light shimmering on the translucent structures that reached skyward like frozen lightning. The city pulsed with life-hovering transports glided smoothly. Through the air, market stalls overflowed with alien flora and bioluminescent fabrics, and citizens of a dozen species filled the boulevards with color and sound. It was a place of wonder where organic and synthetic merged, where tradition hummed beneath the glassy surface of progress. Michael stepped onto the landing platform, the dry wind brushing his short-cropped hair. His armor was plain compared to the ornate ceremonial gear of the Exalans, but it bore the scars of 100 Earthside conflicts. He squinted up at the distant Colosseum towers piercing the horizon, the heart of why he'd come. Officially, he was a military observer, a lone human among many, but he had arrived with a different purpose: the Z Colosseum tournament. If Exala Prime was to be more than a posting, more than another political assignment, he had to earn the right to stand among their warriors. And there was only one way to do that. By sunset, the crowd roared like a living creature. Tens of thousands packed into the G Colosseum, its glass and stone architecture designed to amplify every cheer and gasp. The sands below shimmered with residual heat as the announcer's voice boomed, echoing in every language. And in the royal box, Queen Zaphira sat unmoved, her expression unreadable. She wore robes of deep indigo, stitched with threads of molten gold, and the circlet that pulsed faintly with energy atop her violet-hued brow. Her golden eyes famed across systems swept the arena without emotion, though her hands tightened faintly on the arms of her throne. She was waiting for something. Or perhaps someone. The gates opposite her creaked open with a deep groan, and Carrick stepped into the light. The crowd roared again. A mountain of green-mottled muscle, armor. Dented from countless victories, his massive warhammer dragging furrows in the sand. Carrick, the undefeated champion. His glare swept the crowd and landed squarely on the small, pale figure walking in from the other side. Michael was a stark contrast. Lean, almost wiry, with sleek armor that shimmered with a subtle blue hue. No bravado, no raised arms. Just focus. Just purpose. He stepped into position and met Carrick's gaze, unflinching. The gong sounded. Carrick roared and charged, warhammer swinging in a thunderous arc. The ground shook under his weight, but Michael moved not with panic, but with precision. He stepped aside, just out of reach, and as Carrick's swing overextended, Michael's blade danced across the champion's flank, drawing a clean, narrow line of blood. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Zaphira's fingers curled on the armrest. Her gaze narrowing slightly. Carrick bellowed again and came harder, faster, his blows heavy and brutal. But Michael never tried to match strength with strength. He danced around the beast, reading the rhythm, the half-second delays, the shifts. In balance. Another slice to the knee joint. Another dodge. Another counterstrike. Minutes stretched. The sand churned beneath their feet. Then it happened. Carrick raised his hammer high, telegraphing the final crushing blow. Michael sidestepped the swing, leapt forward, and with fluid precision struck Carrick's wrist, disarming him. The hammer crashed to the ground with a deep thud. The arena fell silent. Michael stood over the gasping champion, sword poised at his throat, and then he stepped back. He lowered his blade, and with a calm breath extended his hand. Carrick stared at it, eyes wide. Then he took it. The Colosseum erupted in thunderous applause, but in the royal box, Queen Zaphira leaned to her attendant, her eyes never leaving. "The human, I want him," she said quietly. Her attendant blinked. "Your Majesty?" Her gaze did not waver. "I said, I want him." Michael stood on the forward deck of the Skyspear gunship as it cut through the dense clouds above the Exalan southern frontier. Lightning forked across the sky, illuminating the jagged mountain ranges below and the remnants of the three shattered outposts that once guarded the border. Smoke rose in thin, dark spirals from the jungle valleys. Nothing moved. No comms. No survivors. Only silence and a single word whispered again and again. Across the encrypted channels. DRACONUS. He narrowed his eyes against the gusting wind, the HUD on his visor flickering with tactical overlays. His strike unit, the first of its kind, led by an off-worlder, stood behind him, armored and ready. They were Exalan-born, fierce and proud, some still clearly skeptical of his command. And yet none of them disobeyed. None dared. Because their queen had chosen him, and that meant more than any bloodline. Commander, came the voice of Era, his sharp-eyed second-in-command. Visual confirmation. Debris, but no bodies. It's too clean. Like they erased their own tracks. Michael's voice was even. Because they want us looking in the wrong place. Trap? Era asked. He nodded. Bay. He gave the order, deploy recon drones, defensive formations. No one walks alone. As the strike team moved into the valley below, Zaphira watched from a secure satellite uplink in the Royal Command Hall. Her expression was unreadable. The entire council chamber was dark save for the glow of the transmission. Around her, generals and strategists whispered in low tones. Some doubted. Some waited to pounce the moment he failed. But not her. She watched every step Michael took on that battlefield as if it were her own. General Tha, seated across from her, finally spoke. You've given him a crown of fire and sent him into the storm. If he dies, the people will blame you. Zaphira turned her head slowly, eyes golden and sharp. And if he lives? Tha's mouth tightened. He had no answer. Meanwhile, down on the surface, Michael knelt beside a twisted control panel at Outpost Theta 4. The interface was scorched, but the damage wasn't from Draconis weapons. It was internal. A sabotage done from inside. Whoever did this, he muttered. They had clearance. Era frowned. Traitors or infiltrators? But as he stood, his eyes caught something. A shimmer in the trees, too regular, too symmetrical. Cloaking tech. He didn't hesitate. Cover now, he shouted, drawing his sidearm. Before the words had fully left his mouth, a beam of white-hot plasma tore through the jungle canopy, searing. A trench into the rock where they had stood seconds before. Chaos exploded. Enemy drop pods decloaked mid-air, slamming into the ground with thunderous force. From them poured soldiers clad in obsidian armor, emblazoned with the sigil of Draconis, sharp, angular, merciless. It was an ambush. Timed to perfection. Michael rolled behind a boulder, barking orders into his comm. Unit 3, flank east. Era, with me suppressing fire. Explosions roared. The jungle burned. Screams filled the air. Through it all, Michael moved like a storm within the storm, fast, decisive, fearless. But his mind burned with one question. How had they known they'd be here? Because someone had tipped them off. Not just sabotage. Betrayal. Back. In Zaph, Zaphira received the live feed of the battlefield, heart hammering in her chest. She watched Michael charge into the fire, pulling an injured soldier to safety, shielding them with his own body. She watched him fight not like a king or a commander, but like a man with nothing left to lose. General Fast stood. I warned you, he said. He's not one of us. No, Zaphira replied coldly, never looking away from the screen. He's better. On the battlefield, as night fell and the enemy retreated into the shadows, Michael stood amidst the bodies of his fallen, breathing hard, armor scorched, eyes blazing with rage and clarity. Era approached, blood on her cheek. We won. Barely. Michael shook his head. No, this wasn't about winning. This was a message. He looked at the horizon where the enemy had vanished. They wanted to test me, see if I'd break. He turned, voice hard. Send word. To the Queen, Draconis isn't coming. He paused, fists clenched. They're already here. Far above, in the royal palace, Zaphira felt the chill run down her spine as the message arrived. But it wasn't just the warning that shook her. It was the second message that came with it, a fragment of intercepted code, one of the Draconis orders found in the ruins, and it bore a name, Fa. The sky above Zaph shimmered with the molten hues of evening, twin suns descending behind jagged mountains that bled golden light across the towering crystalline skyline. The city was electric, abuzz with the aftershock of what had transpired in the Z Coliseum hours earlier. Across Exala Prime, the name of the human warrior Michael was being spoken in every home, every council hall, every military enclave. But far from the roaring crowds and blinding glory, Michael stood alone in a quiet chamber within the palace, staring at a set of towering obsidian doors, flanked by two guards in ornate armor that gleamed like molten obsidian. The summons had come quickly. No explanation. No delay. He had been led through labyrinthine corridors of polished stone and floating light panels where silent attendants bowed but offered no words. Now he waited for what he did not know. Behind those doors was the heart of Exalan power. And within it, the doors opened. He stepped into a chamber unlike anything he had ever seen, part throne room, part starlit observatory. Translucent panels above opened to the night sky, and floating crystalline structures pulsed with ambient light, reflecting off the water channel that cut through the floor. At the far end, beneath a hovering crest of twin suns, stood Queen Zaphira. She wore no crown. She did not sit upon her throne. She stood at the water's edge, her silhouette outlined in soft violet light, her eyes glowing like twin embers of golden fire. Michael of Earth, she said, not turning. Her voice echoed, delicate and sharp like a blade drawn in silence. Approach. Michael did. Step by cautious step, he walked toward the queen who had summoned him, the ruler whose words had already begun to ripple through every political chamber on the planet. I want him. She turned to face him, up close. She was even more commanding. The strange shimmer of her skin like moonlight dancing on dark metal was mesmerizing. Her gaze, intense and unreadable, fixed on him like a scientist studying a rare phenomenon. You showed restraint, she said softly. Mercy. Michael held her gaze. He was beaten. There was no need to humiliate him. Zaphira tilted her head, curious. You would have won greater glory if you had killed him. The crowd would have loved you more. I didn't come for glory. That made her pause. A silence bloomed between them. Then, why did you come, Michael? He hesitated. Then, truthfully, because I was tired of fighting meaningless wars, I came to be tested, truly tested. Not in politics, not in the shadows of machines, but in the open against something real. Zaphira moved closer. And what did you find? He met her eyes. Purpose, maybe. A faint smile curved her lips. Perhaps. But just as quickly, the warmth in her gaze hardened into something colder. She walked past him, her voice low. Do you know what your victory has cost? He turned, frowning. What do you mean? The arena is not just sport, Michael. It is a proving ground for the strongest to rise. You disarmed Carrick. You showed mercy. You appended an unspoken code. And now the old guard stirs. There are those who would see you removed, not because you are human, but because you broke. The illusion that brute strength is all we have. She faced him again. There are those on my council who would rather see the throne fall than see a man like you rise beside it. A beat passed. Her words lingered like ice in his lungs. Then came the question he wasn't prepared for. Would you die for this world, Michael? He blinked. What? Would you fight? bleed, and die. For Exala Prime, even knowing your blood is alien, and many would never see you as one of us. His answer came without hesitation. Yes. Zaphira's golden eyes widened just a fraction. Good, she said quietly, because war is coming. Before he could speak, a door behind the throne burst open. A sharp-footed commander in silver robes approached, saluting crisply, "My queen." A breach on the southern border. 3 sentry outposts are offline. No communication. Draconis ships detected in orbit. Zaphira's expression darkened. So? Soon, she turned to Michael. Your first trial begins now. He straightened. Give me a command. I'll prove myself. You already have, she said, stepping close enough for him to feel the heat of her presence. Now? You must survive it. She raised her hand and drew a sigil in the air. A flash of light. Michael's name appeared in Exalan script above a tactical display. Commander Michael of Earth, she declared, loud enough for all in the chamber to hear. You are hereby granted provisional command over a mobile strike. Unit, you will assess the southern breach, engage as necessary, and report directly to me. Michael nodded once. Understood. But as he turned to leave, Zaphira spoke again. Michael. He paused. She stepped closer once more. Her voice dropped, nearly a whisper, for him alone. When I said I wanted you, I did not speak in jest. Their eyes locked. Fire. Distance. Danger. Longing. But no further words were spoken. As Michael exited the chamber, pulse quickening. He understood something elemental. He had just become more than a warrior. He had become a spark, and someone or something was already gathering the winds to extinguish him. The grand spires of Zaph stood still under a sky choked with storm clouds. The usual harmony of the crystalline city, its symphonic tones of flowing water, hovercraft hums, and open-air markets had fallen silent. Tension buzzed beneath the calm like a live wire. Patrols tripled. Curfews imposed. The Queen's banners still flew, but the winds that carried them smelled of smoke and war. Inside the royal citadel, Queen Zaphira paced the starlit chamber that overlooked the city. She had not left her war chamber in 2 days. The intercepted code from the battlefield replayed endlessly on her private console, the name at the center pulsing like poison in her veins. General Fa. He had served her mother before her. He had led the planetary defense forces for over 40 cycles. He was loyal, proud, powerful, and now possibly a traitor, but no charges had yet been made. No confrontation. Not yet. The wrong move could fracture the council, could spark civil war even as Draconis poised to strike again. The balance was delicate, and it was tilting fast. And Michael, her human commander, her soldier who had returned from the ambush with smoke in his lungs and blood on his hands, was not yet aware of just how deep the rot might go. She needed to warn him. She needed to protect him, but she also needed to know if he could protect her. Michael stood in the underground chamber below the Vanguard training complex. Armor off, breath slow, and even as he cycled through Earth-style combat drills. His muscles ached, his shoulder still freshly stitched from a plasma graze, but he moved like a machine, each strike sharper than the last. He needed the pain. It cleared his mind. The ambush still haunted him. He had lost 4 soldiers. Era had nearly died. And even after pushing Draconis back, something deeper festered. Someone had betrayed their location. His cum chirped. Message from the Queen. Personal encryption. High priority. Tonight. After dusk. Come alone. Observatory Gardens. No explanation. No guards. Michael frowned but didn't hesitate. The observatory gardens were empty when he arrived. The palace guards stationed a discreet distance away. The moonlight shimmered across the bioluminescent petals of alien flora, casting eerie, shifting patterns across the polished stone. The silence felt sacred. Zaphira stood in the center of it all, dressed in a robe of midnight blue, no crown, no formal guard, just her. "You came," she said without turning. "You summoned me," Michael replied. "I didn't summon you as your queen," she said. "I summoned you as a woman." He blinked. "Why?" She turned to face him. Her golden eyes weren't fierce tonight. They were uncertain, searching. "Because I need someone I can trust." He stepped closer. "You have an entire council." Her laugh was soft, bitter. "Do I?" Tha's name was in the Draconis Code. "But if I accuse him now, without evidence, half the council will call it a power grab. The military will fracture. We'll lose before we even fire a shot." Michael's voice dropped. "You want me to get proof?" "I want you to survive," she said, voice catching with emotion. "But yes. If I cannot trust the throne's most senior general, I must trust the man who nearly died to protect strangers." A long pause followed, the silence between them now different charged. Zaphira stepped closer. "You fought for us when we didn't deserve you. You led our soldiers like they were your own. You never asked for power, yet you've won hearts across this world. Including—" She stopped herself, breath caught between confession and silence. Michael's gaze locked onto hers. "Including yours?" She said nothing. He reached out, gently brushing his fingers against hers. "You don't have to hide behind your title." "Zaphira, not with me." Her lips parted. Her eyes burned brighter. "This can't be. It already is." Then she kissed him. It wasn't gentle. It was fierce, desperate, hungry for something the world had denied them both. They broke the kiss only when their breath ran out, the sound of their hearts louder than the wind. But the moment shattered like glass. A shriek tore through the air alarms echoing from the palace walls. Zaphira pulled back, breathless. "We're under attack." Michael's visor lit up on his wrist. An explosion in the Vanguard barracks. A second in the council hall courtyard. The palace was being hit from the inside. "Tha's moving," Michael growled. Zaphira's eyes narrowed. "And he's making his play." She tapped her com. "Lock the palace. Activate combat protocol. Commander Michael is to be granted full tactical authority." One of her aides replied in panic. "Your Majesty, Tha's forces have already overridden the palace shields. He's declaring you unfit. Claims you've been compromised by the human." Michael stiffened. "They're framing me," he said. "They're framing us," she corrected. She drew a blade from beneath her robe, its curved edge humming with royal energy. "Stay close. We fight our way to the inner vault. If they want the throne, they'll have to take it from our cold hands." Side by side, they ran through the flames of rebellion. And above the palace, in the night sky, the Draconis fleet began to descend. Smoke curled through the golden halls of the royal citadel as chaos reigned within. The air, once perfumed with alien florals and ceremonial incense, now reeked of plasma discharge, scorched metal, and betrayal. Michael pressed his back against a shattered pillar, breath tight in his lungs, the hiss of scorched stone behind him a reminder of how close death had come. A squad of palace guards no longer loyal had opened fire as he and Queen Zaphira raced through the grand gallery, cutting them off from the war chamber. These weren't confused soldiers. These were well-trained assassins, embedded under General Tha's authority, executing a coup. Beside him, Zaphira crouched low, her royal blade shimmering in the dim light. Her robe was torn, streaked with soot and blood, whether her own or another's, he didn't know. But her grip on the weapon never faltered. She had traded her crown for steel. And yet, even amid the chaos, she radiated a terrifying kind of calm. "They're closing in," Michael muttered, checking the charge on his plasma pistol. "We need to get to the inner vault." "No," Zaphira said. "We need to get to the people." Michael glanced at her, confused. Your Majesty, I won't hide while my world burns. She rose, blade humming to full charge. This is our palace, Commander. Ours. And I will not let him wear my crown as long as I still breathe. Michael's heart pounded not from fear, but awe. He had seen leaders retreat behind drones and bunkers. He had seen commanders abandon men to save pride. But never had he seen someone face death so willingly, with fire in their eyes and nothing left to lose but honor. You're going to get yourself killed, he said. Her golden eyes met his. Then fight at my side and make sure I don't. They moved. Room by room, corridor by corridor, they fought like shadows through fire. Loyalists began to rally as word spread. The Queen lived. And she was fighting. Her presence ignited hope like a flare in the dark. The vanguard, led by Captain Era, breached the outer barracks and began reclaiming the palace one level at a time, pushing back Tha's usurpers, but time was running out. In orbit, the Draconis fleet had begun its descent. Not in waves, but in spears. Spears meant they believed the city would fall from within, and they weren't wrong. Inside the throne hall, General Tha stood at the base of the dais, flanked by a dozen elite guards in black and red armor. The throne itself loomed behind him, ancient and luminous, carved from a single shard of star-forged obsidian. It waited for a ruler, but not one born of betrayal. A technician whispered in Tha's ear, "They're alive." Tha's expression darkened. "Then we end this now." The grand doors of the throne hall blew inward in a storm of fire and shattered crystal. Michael charged through first, plasma bolts singing past his ears, his sword flashing in the haze. Behind him came Zaphira, not as monarch, but as warrior, her blade cleaving a path through the traitors like lightning made flesh. The throne hall became a battlefield. Zaphira and Tha met blade to blade at the foot of the dais, sparks flying with every impact. Tha was older, stronger, but Zaphira was faster, furious, and unyielding. Their duel raged while Michael held back. The tide of guards, shoulder to shoulder with Era and the remnants of the vanguard. Tha snarled as he pushed Zaphira back. "You let him in, Zaphira, the human. You let him into our halls, into your heart. You've tainted the throne with outsider blood." Zaphira's eyes blazed. "And you've poisoned it with fear." Their blades clashed again. On the upper balcony, Michael spotted it, a cloaked Draconis sniper. Hidden in the rafters, weapon aimed not at Zaphira, but at THA. What? And in that moment, everything clicked. The coup was never about control. It was about distraction. "Zaphira!" he shouted. "Tha's not the traitor anymore. He's the pawn. Draconis used him." But it was too late. The sniper fired. The bolt struck Tha in the chest. The general dropped to his knees, stunned, confused, dying without understanding that he had been the first sacrifice. Michael raised his weapon and fired. The sniper fell, cloak dissolving, reptilian armor glinting for a split second before crashing down into the shadows. Zaphira knelt beside Tha, catching his final breath. "Forgive." "Nee," he rasped, blood trickling from his lips. "I only wanted strength." And then he was gone. The room still. Then, above them, the sky split. A Draconis dreadnought breached the upper atmosphere, casting a shadow over the city that turned daylight to dusk. Hundreds of fighters followed. Missiles rained down like fire from heaven. Era activated her comm. The shield generators, Queen, they're still offline. "If they breach the capital," Zaphira stood, her voice steely. "They won't." She turned to Michael. "This is it," she said. "We stand or we fall." He nodded, stepping to her side. "Then let's give them something to remember." They left the throne room behind them, not as ruler and soldier, but as warriors bound by fire, blood, and something deeper. Love forged not in peace, but in war. The final battle for Exala Prime had begun. The sky over Zav cracked open like a wound, bleeding fire and thunder onto the golden capital. The Draconis dreadnought descended in defiance of Exala Prime's pride, its bulk blotting out the twin suns and drowning the crystalline city in smoke and shadow. Missiles screamed through the air. Plasma beams lanced down from the heavens, turning towers to molten ruin. The time for diplomacy was gone. The war had begun not at the borders, not in the stars, but here, in the very heart of the planet. Within the Queen's citadel, alarms wailed in overlapping tones. Emergency lights bathed the walls in crimson as evacuation orders were broadcast. On every channel, soldiers scrambled, fires raged. Panic began to spread, but not in the throne hall. There, at the apex of chaos, stood Queen Zaphira, her robes torn, her blade still blood-slick, and her gaze carved from steel. The throne behind her stood empty, untouched, while the floor around it bore the scars of betrayal and sacrifice. General Fa's body lay draped beneath the ancient crest. His death a final atonement. At her side stood Michael, battered and scorched, his human armor cracked but his resolve unshaken. The vanguard surrounded them, Captain Era issuing commands. As if born to lead, loyalty burned in their eyes. Zaphira raised her voice to the high-frequency relay, her tone sharp and regal. "This is Queen Zaphira of Exala Prime. To all remaining military units, mobilize. Focus fire on the dreadnought's approach path. Shield generators must be reactivated. Commander Michael will lead the forward defense. I will take command of Citadel operations." She turned to Michael. "You know this enemy?" she said. "You've studied their patterns, fought them when others didn't dare." Michael nodded. "And this time, we hit them where it hurts." They shared a glance, no words. Just purpose. But as Michael turned to leave, Zaphira caught his hand. One brief heartbeat, a pause in the hurricane. "If I don't see you again," she said, quietly, "know this. I would have given you the stars." Michael looked back at her, eyes fierce, voice low. "Then live. And we'll build them together." The battlefield was hell. Draconis dropships tore through the city's upper layers like daggers. Through silk, plasma cannons thundered from rooftops. Alien infantry, armored in dark crimson plating and wielding chain blades and rail rifles, flooded the lower districts, but Michael's forces were already moving. The vanguard split into squads, each with specialized roles: demolitions, sabotage, heavy assault. Using earthborn guerrilla tactics refined with Exalan precision, they struck fast and disappeared faster. Ambushes, collapses, decoys. Still, the enemy kept coming. The planetary shields once. The pride of Exala Prime had been crippled by the traitorous sabotage earlier in the coup. Their core control centers lay beneath the mountains north of the capital, in a bunker known as Soul Crown. If they weren't reactivated within the hour, the city's remaining defenses would collapse, and Draconis would turn Exala Prime into a smoldering ruin. Michael led the strike team into the mountains himself. As the gunship descended, turbulence rocked the vessel hard. Enemy fighters swarmed overhead, chasing them through the rocky ravines. Anti-air fire lit up the dusk. One blast clipped a rear engine. Alarms blared, metal screamed. "Brace!" Michael shouted. The gunship slammed into the mountainside in a controlled crash, skidding through dense trees and snow until it came to a halt at the base of Soul Crown. Fire licked the wings, but the vanguard inside crawled free, bruised but alive. Michael checked his weapon. "We finished this." The bunker was ancient, older than Zaf itself. Its doors were sealed with Exalan biometric locks, keyed only to bloodlines of the royal house. Zap HIRA single quotes S. Michael frowned at the door. "Can we break it?" Era asked. Michael said nothing. He stepped forward, activated his wristcom, and opened a secure frequency. Zaphira, he said. We need you now. There was silence, then her voice. I'm on my way. Back in the Citadel, Zaphira moved fast, ignoring the protests of her advisors. Prepare my transport. I'm taking the Queen's Hawk. My lady, one aide cried. You cannot expose yourself. I will not let Exala Prime fall behind a locked door. She took the sky. Minutes later, her vessel streaked over the mountains like a blade through darkness. Draconis fighters attempted to intercept her, but Royal Defense protocols cleared a path. With surgical precision, she landed beside the smoking gunship. She stepped out alone, her face cut and dusted with ash, her violet skin streaked with battle grime and her eyes alight with purpose. Michael stood waiting. You came. I told you, she replied. If I survive, we build the stars. She pressed her hand to the biometric lock. The door hissed, gears grinding. Inside, a glowing core chamber. Dozens of terminals still active. Power conduits. Humming. But Draconis saboteurs had already been here. Code scrambled. Relays overloaded. Michael approached the interface. I can fix it, Zaphira blinked. You understand our tech? No, he said. But I understand desperation. Working quickly, he began rerouting power manually, overriding failsafes, splicing Earth-based code into the alien system. Sparks danced. The ground trembled. Then, sealed core activated. Above Zaph, energy surged skyward, waves of protective. Light cascaded over the city, locking the Draconis fleet out in a sudden, luminous dome. Bombs detonated harmlessly against the new barrier. The capital erupted in cheers. Era's voice came through on comms. It worked. They're pulling back. Michael sank to one knee, exhausted. Zap HIRA caught him before he could fall. You did. It, she whispered. No, he said, looking up at her with a tired smile. We did. Then a sharp tone broke across every frequency. All hands stand by. Enemy dreadnought is accelerating. The command post fell into sudden silence. Michael stood. Zaphira's eyes narrowed. On the horizon, the Draconis dreadnought was not retreating. It was descending. Not for bombardment, for landing. They're not leaving, Michael said. There. Coming to finish it. Ground war. Zaphira's voice turned cold. Then we'll finish it first. They turned toward the battlefield, side by side. Not as queen and outsider, but as one force. The final hour was upon them. The dreadnought landed like a god of war, its massive frame descending onto the scorched plains west of Zaph with a sound like the sky itself tearing apart. Its weight cracked the earth, sent shockwaves rolling across the land, and extinguished the last traces of peace. All communications across the planet went silent for 3 full seconds, and then hell answered. Thousands of Draconis troops disembarked in perfect formation, discipline carved into bone, ruthlessness shaped by centuries of conquest. Tanks with legs taller than trees emerged from the flanks. Gunships, like screaming metal vultures, circled overhead. This wasn't an invasion. It was annihilation. Inside the mountain bunker, shield systems at full charge, Queen Zaphira stared at the holographic display with a calm far colder than the rising. Panic gripping the command channels. They're committing. Everything, she said. Michael stepped beside her, silent, his hand tightening around the hilt of his sword. His wounds from the previous fights were still fresh, but his eyes burned brighter than ever. This is their final hand, he said. No reinforcements, no retreat plan. They think we'll crack under pressure. Zaphira's gaze turned to him. Then let's teach them how humans and Exalans answer pressure. For the first time in generations, every battalion on Exala Prime was called to one location. The Vanguard led the charge. Michael and Era coordinated tactics using orbital scans and predictive simulations. Earthborn algorithms now intertwined with Exalan data streams. For the first time, technology from two worlds wove a singular purpose. Strike groups formed. Artillery was deployed in crescent lines just beyond the shield dome, but even as they prepared, the people of Exala knew this would not be won by machines alone. It would be won by hearts, by hands, by blades drawn in defiance. Dawn rose blood red, and with it, the shield dome parted for a single breach, a corridor through which Exala's defenders poured like fire from a storm. Michael led the tip of the spear. His voice, transmitted to all frequencies, rang with iron. Today we fight not just for land or honor, but for the right to write our own future. For Exala, for unity, for the Queen. The soldiers roared, and they charged. The battlefield became a nightmare. Symphony. Draconis troops struck in brutal precision, but the vanguard's new tactics turned their every strength against them. Units split and reformed, disappearing into terrain before ambushing enemy lines from the flanks. The jungle surrounding the plains was weaponized, trees brought down to collapse tanks, ravines redirected into choke points, weather control satellites rerouted to blind aerial assaults. Zaphira joined the fight herself, wearing ancient Exalan war armor, the suit of her mother, once worn to repel the first Draconis scouts a century ago. She fought like a storm given shape. Each swing of her blade disarmed not only enemy soldiers, but the very idea that royalty did not bleed. She fought beside Michael. Every time they moved, her grace and his fury, her command and his chaos, seemed to reshape the battlefield itself. Then came the warlord. From the core of the dreadnought emerged the Draconis High Commander, a beast of 10 feet and shadow-forged armor, with 6 cybernetic limbs and a serrated energy glaive longer than a man. He tore through tanks like paper, his voice amplified to a sonic screech that made soldiers tremble. He moved like death incarnate, and he was coming straight for the Queen. Michael saw it first. He ran. Zaphira! But she was already turning. Blade raised, eyes focused. The warlord slammed into her like a meteor, his glaive cutting down with bone-shattering force. She blocked it barely. Her knees hit the ground. Sparks erupted. Her armor cracked. Michael collided with the beast from behind, his blade plunging deep into one of the warlord's cybernetic limbs. The creature roared, flinging him away. Zaphira stood again. She was bleeding, but unbowed. She looked at Michael across the field, her voice reaching him through the bond they had forged, not in words, but in "will stand with me." He rose. Together, they attacked. One heart, one breath, one strike. Michael leapt high, bringing his sword down like a hammer from the sky. Zaphira moved low, spinning beneath the warlord's swing, and plunged her blade through the beast's core as Michael's sword cut clean through its neck. Warlord collapsed, and with him the dreadnought halted, its system slave to his biometric command. Tremor passed through the battlefield. And then silence. Draconis forces faltered, disoriented, leaderless. Zaphira raised her voice. To all Draconis soldiers, surrender or be destroyed. Your war ends here. One by one, they dropped their weapons. Exala Prime did not cheer. Not at first. They stood in stunned silence, beneath the rising light of dawn, and looked around to see the world had not ended. The palace still stood. The city still stood. They still stood. Then, like thunder, came the roar. A roar of triumph. A roar of freedom. And above them, the twin suns emerged, burning away the last shadows of war. Later, as the celebration spread across the planet, Michael and Zaphira stood once more in the observatory gardens. The stars had returned to their rightful place in the sky. She turned to him, robes of silver wrapped over fresh armor, her eyes softer, now less queen, more woman. You saved us, she said. He took her hand. You saved me first, she smiled. Then let's stop saving and start building. He raised an eyebrow. A future? No, she whispered. A home. That evening, at the foot of the restored throne, Zaphira stood before the people flanked by the council, the vanguard, and the scarred banners of every allied house. She raised her voice, heard by every citizen of Exala Prime and beyond. Today we honor those who bled for peace. And we recognize that strength alone is not what saved us. It was unity. It was trust. And above all, it was love. She turned to Michael. He came from a world far beyond our stars. He came not to conquer, but to stand beside us. And I say to all of Exala, I choose him. She reached for his hand. The crowd erupted, not with shock, but with celebration. Michael stepped forward. I never asked for a crown, but I stand here because this world showed me something Earth never did hope, a reason to fight, a reason to stay. I will give all I am to protect this home, our home. And so, on that day, Michael of Earth was crowned first Guardian King of Exala. Prime got not by conquest, but by choice. The people cheered until the stars rose, and above them, Queen Zaphira and her human king stood united, a legacy born in battle. And sealed in love.